One of the weird and nerdy things about me is that I love to read and hear about what I call healing stories. Recently, I read a book called Radical Remission by Dr. Kelly Turner, and it's just what you think, stories of cancer patients who were sent home on hospice and then miraculously, radically healed. One of the reasons I love hearing these stories is because I want to know what they did. If what they did healed them from a terminal diagnosis, then it could certainly be good for me in my everyday life to prevent disease. So I have a certified Radical Remission health coach on the show today, Liz Curran. She takes us through the healing commonalities found in the book. I hope you'll listen, and if you love it like I think you will, please take a few minutes to leave a review and share it with a friend. We love seeing your reviews. Welcome to the Daily Wellness Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Meredith. I've led my family on a transformative health journey for over a decade, and now I help other families do the same. So this is a place where you can learn about healthy living and take the next step in your wellness journey. Hey, Daily Wellness listeners, have you ever wished for specific guided help with your health journey? Maybe you need someone to teach you about menu planning or how to get your whole family on board with healthy eating. Maybe you need recommendations for non-toxic cleaning and personal care products so that you can finally make the switch. Now, you and I can chat one-on-one about whatever health topic you'd like. For more details and to schedule, go to dailywellnesscommunity.com/coaching. Now back to the episode. Liz, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Can you kind of introduce us to what this Radical Remission is all about and what the Radical Remission Project does?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So Radical Remission started, it became a book, a New York Times bestselling book in 2014. The lead up to that is really at the heart of the story. So the Radical Remission research was done by Dr. Kelly Turner, one of my colleagues, years ago, as she was curious and wanted to know how spontaneous remission cancer patients were healing without the aid of medicine. She was an oncology social worker at the time. She wanted to get her PhD and use this as her thesis. So she was going to University of Cal Berkeley for her PhD, and she was very excited to kind of get permission to go ahead and study this. She was funded by the American Cancer Society to travel, and she went all over the world. She traveled to 10 countries in 10 months and interviewed healers and patients and learned a whole lot of information about all the different things that they did. And she, when you hear her tell the story, she talks about how as she was going from place to place and starting to hear the commonalities, she realized that she was really onto something. And so she, in addition to those interviews, she dove into medical journals, researched spontaneous remission case studies and cases, and found that after looking across 1,500 different stories, that they all did these. And in this book, it's 9 things. They all did these 9 things.
Yeah.
And I'll share a little bit more about what that is in a minute. But then in 2020, she came out with Radical Hope, the second book, and that one includes one additional healing factor, and we can talk a little bit more about how that came to be. But ultimately, they're physical and emotional, mental, spiritual healing factors. Only 3 are physical, and those healing factors were used by all the people that were interviewed and studied, and then published into Radical Remission, the book. And then now the Radical Remission Project offers different ways for people to engage with that information.
Yeah, I love that story. I just think it's fascinating. And it's so fascinating to me, in fact, that like a year and a half ago, I actually took Radical Remission to the beach with me as my beach read because I was so excited to read it. I honestly can't tell you how I heard about it. I cannot remember. But I ordered it right away and I was like, this just fascinates me. And I love kind of the reasoning that she gives for writing the book in the back. I was just going to read a little snippet of that. She says, She says, there is this wonderful, complex reality of individuality. Radical remission survivors constantly remind me that no two people on this planet are the same, and therefore no two prescriptions for health will be the same. Some people need to focus more on their diets in order to heal. Others need to focus on releasing anger from their past. Some might need to focus on taking control of their healing, while others need to focus on detoxifying their bodies. Some people need to focus on all these things equally. And then so why none of these 9 key factors in this book are more important than the others. Everything depends on which particular factors your unique body needs for healing. And then she talks about just how scary cancer is for people, how getting that diagnosis is just like, kind of takes the breath out of you. And people just kind of feel paralyzed. And she wanted to give power back to people. And so I love that so much because my life through my family has been impacted by cancer. And I know what that feels like, as a loved one, also feeling powerless to help the people that you love that are going through a cancer diagnosis. And so I really love the empowerment that this does give to people. So I want to go through these factors with you so that people can get like a little glimpse of things that they can actually, take steps forward in instead of just feeling hopeless. And so, which is, I know, the 10th factor, but
yeah.
So if you don't mind, would you just start walking us through what some of those factors are? And then I know I'll have questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for reading that in the back of the book, because I do love hearing those words. So true that, everyone is individual and we do talk about these factors. And there's no order of importance. And just to say, we're going to talk about a lot of different things. But just to clarify, Radical Remission is not against conventional treatment. We are not, we do not advocate one way or the other. Everybody has a very personal decision around that. We just know that these healing factors boost your immune system and are safe with any form of treatment. So we just like to make sure that is clear, because a lot of times, they're all science-based, but a lot of times people can misinterpret them as being, alternative or and really, they're not. They're things that we all hear every day. So let me just share what they are with you. And just briefly explain them as we go through, and, feel free to stop and ask if you have questions.
Perfect.
Great. So the 3 physical ones will not probably be a surprise. So first one is radically changing your diet. And she found that they did so many different things. Of course, that many people, lots of different ways of eating. But what she did see was that they all prioritized having half their plates full of fruits and vegetables for every meal and snack. So getting those nutrient-dense foods in, cutting the processed foods, reducing meat and gluten and dairy and alcohol and sugar. Yeah, so those were kind of the commonalities with diet. Another one, and this is the only one we say really needs to be done with a licensed practitioner, is getting herbs and supplements prescribed for you, specific to you. We advocate getting in touch with a practitioner. Maybe it's an oncology naturopath or an integrative doctor. Lots of different ways for you to connect with people to help you with supplements, but making sure that they're doing individualized testing to see what you actually need, so that they are giving you the prescriptions that are unique to you, and not just, everyone with breast cancer should be taking more of this. It's really very specific to what your needs are. And that is very important to get done with someone who is licensed to prescribe that.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah. And then the third one, which is the new one, the 10th factor that we talk about that came out in Radical Hope, is exercise. And the reason it wasn't in the first book, it didn't come up in the research, because she was working and speaking to people who they had been on hospice. They'd gone home on hospice from whatever care they were on, and then they healed. So exercise was not top of mind.
Right. They're too weak, right?
Right. It wasn't like they were going for a run. So the idea of movement kind of started to develop. And after the book came out, a Radical Remission book came out, the question started to arise pretty frequently. Why wasn't exercise in there? So she went back into the research and found that, in fact, movement was in there, and people progressing from, laying in their beds to being able to sit up, to being able to stand up, to being able to walk to the restroom, like
Right.
little baby steps that eventually just led them to moving more functionally again. And so that really was part of the healing, but it wasn't clear in the research in the beginning.
Yeah. Of those three, like the diet one is especially fascinating to me because that's just something I am passionate about, like nutrition and all the things. And I loved how she interviewed people from all over the world. So it's not like these people were eating the same thing. And here in America, and I think even in the kind of cancer world, like you hear people saying, this is the diet you need to eat, and this is the diet you need to eat, and this is the most healthy, thing to put in your mouth, et cetera, et cetera. And it was just really cool to see that these people were not eating the same foods. They were all eating nutrient-dense foods, but they weren't all exactly the same foods, and they still healed.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's so true. I mean, think about all the different cultures of the world. We're all eating very differently.
Yeah.
And, the commonalities make a lot of sense. It's just really for, keeping as much whole foods wherever you live, and whatever those whole foods might be. So you can't just say, oh, everybody should be eating more berries. They're not all over the world. So you have to make sure that you're eating. And that is something that you can also get done if you're working with that licensed practitioner in that herbs and supplements way. They can do lots of nutrition testing to figure out what way of eating is most compatible for you.
Right. What you might be deficient in and different things like that. Yeah. I think there was also kind of just a theme of people eating more intuitively, right? Or like, this does not seem like it's good for me. They were just following that kind of gut instinct that they had of, I don't need to be eating this, or I need to be eating this. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I think is something we can all learn from because we, can do that ourselves. Yeah. Here and now.
Yes. Well, that'll bring us right to the next factor. There you go. Well, so those are the three physical. The other ones are we put them in categories of emotional, mental, spiritual. So intuition is one of them. Learning to follow your intuition, exactly like what you just said with eating. That covers goes into different categories, obviously, but making sure that you are really in tune with the physical reactions your body might be having to an experience, and then making sure that your mind and your gut are connected and they're kind of talking to each other because they can act very independently of each other. The research is fascinating. If you, dig a little into the scientific research, our bodies know so many things before our brain does. And that's just being a human. And there's, studies done by, Cornell University and different really big institutions that have shown that, even just doing for example, I'll just give you one. And I think this was done by the HeartMath Institute. So a reputable organization. They did a study. They told the participants they were going to be gambling, and they used the roulette wheel and they had to guess which number it was going to be and whatnot. And what they found was that the body already knew if their guess was right or wrong before it actually fell into the slot on the roulette wheel. So there's a lot of research like that. It seems really woo-woo, but it's just the human experience and the bodies that we have that we've over time, we've just kind of lost touch with using that as the guide. So that's how it kind of fell back into this healing factor list, because all of those people were utilizing their intuition.
Yeah, I love that. I think that plays into every other healing factor a little bit. It kind of overlaps.
Yeah. And, when we work with clients, we'll say, what is the hardest one for you? What is the easiest one for you on this list? And even that takes intuition, it can come from logic or emotion. But looking at that list and being like, you know what, I feel like even if I need help with that one, that's not the one I want to work on right now. I want to work on this one. And it's because it just feels like in their bodies, it feels like the next one they need to work on.
Like that's going to be the most powerful thing for me right now.
Yeah. In their healing at that moment.
Right.
Yep. So yeah, the one that we usually kind of so intuition kind of falls in that spiritual, in a way, a spiritual factor along with deepening your spiritual connection. And that does not look like any specific religion. It's very secular, very much just feeling connected to something greater than yourself. Some people might associate that with even just nature. It can be a religion, but it doesn't have to be. And we find that it's really important for people to feel the connectedness on being on this earth. And I sometimes will describe the feeling of awe that you can feel when if you imagine like standing below a 3-story high waterfall and just the, taking in the beauty and the grandeur and feeling like you're this like a little dot on this big planet. And awe really is a beautiful way to connect with that spiritual feeling in your body.
Oh, I like that. I try to incorporate that even with my kids now. I'm just thinking of this as you're talking, because I homeschool my kiddos, and one of the things I always want to keep at the forefront of our schooling and education is that sense of awe and wonder. Because if they have that, they're going to be motivated, right, to keep learning and to keep growing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great way to keep them interested.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. I love that.
That's probably connected to healing in the same way, because if you have that sense of, oh, there's something bigger kind of outside of me, then I can keep going and I can keep learning and growing because there's more outside of what I'm experiencing right now. Yeah.
Yes. And that is kind of a novel idea of, looking outside of the borders of what we know and having the drive and interest in looking outside of that.
Right.
Which is kind of where this book comes in, because none of it is rocket science. None of it is, she was saying on her research, she was hoping she would go to like some remote place and find that there was this one herb that was going to do it. But unfortunately it wasn't that simple, but she was able to identify really tangible things that people can do at no cost. They're very accessible. So going back into the list, there's the mental ones. Actually, I'll go into the emotional ones next.
Okay.
So increasing positive emotions is one that came up, making sure that there's time for joy every single day, and making sure that you have a practice. We talk about it being a muscle that needs to be exercised. So because oftentimes with a diagnosis like that, it's very trying, it's grueling, it can be scary, it can be sad, it can be frustrating, a lot of difficult emotions. So making sure that you can find the joy, even if it's some form of gratitude for that day or a tiny silver lining that you can find. As we work typically with people that are either metastatic or kind of further along in their experience, and they have been dealing with this disease for a long time, and they say so many beautiful things about how different their life is for the better since the diagnosis. There are a lot of gifts that come from having a diagnosis that you would not see at that very first day when you hear those words, you have cancer. So increasing positive emotions is really a valuable way to get yourself out of those darker places.
What are some examples of this couple things that you've done to do that?
Yeah. So I would say, there's one thing that people may not have heard of called laughter yoga. And that is just like a really goofy, childlike way for adults to kind of laugh together and play together. You can do it on Zoom. There's all kinds of resources on YouTube and different things. But that is one way. If you're completely alone and you're not able to be a self-starter and find joy, that's just a nice, goofy way to connect with strangers. And I'll leave it at that, so people can
everybody's going to be Googling later.
Yeah, go check it out. I believe the founder of laughter yoga is Madan Kataria, I think is his name. So you can kind of Google him up. He's a joyful guy. Other ways, some people really like to have gratitude journals or, use gratitude apps where there's one I think I found that's I was using for a while called 3 Good Things, I think it's called. And you just get to type in every day 3 things that went well, or that you would have gratitude for. And then if you want to, it allows you to kind of turn it into a message and send it to someone. So if they were part of your gratitude for the day, you can kind of like pay it forward and give them a little smile. Yeah. So I like that app. That was a good one. There's so many resources. One of the Radical Remission survivors created an organization called Comedy Cures. And I think she's probably in the book.
Yeah.
She has her website still to this day. There is a phone number that you can call to listen to a joke of the day and some comedy routines. It's 1-888 ha 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 ha.
Yeah. I loved reading that story. How she just played I think maybe it was, I don't know if she had them like on DVD. I can't remember the format. She listened to
videos.
She would just VHS videos. Yeah. I wanted to say that, but I was like, surely not. But okay, it was. And she would just put that in and just to laugh and just knew that was helping her. Yeah. That was amazing.
Yeah. And being able to access that. I mean, the research that we present when we talk about this on a grander scale is really about there's been studies where people are watching comedy during chemotherapy. And then after they can check their blood work and their metrics and their testing, and they see that it is impactful on the way that inflammation markers and the natural killer cells and, there's so many things that shine when you can find joy while getting your infusions. And I think that's really fascinating.
It is. Yeah.
Why not just, put the laptop aside and, get the work out of the way. Maybe don't watch Netflix. Do something. And maybe if you're going to watch Netflix, make it something funny that will actually make you laugh. And the reason all these factors work is because they activate the part of the brain that it's our internal pharmacy that, deposits all of our happy hormones into our body. So our oxytocin, our endorphins, our serotonin, those kinds of hormones get released when we find joy, when we have, peaceful feelings, when we're not in a state of, frantic fight or flight mode. So that is why these factors boost the immune system.
Yep. I love that.
Yeah. So we pair that one with releasing suppressed emotions. And that is the umbrella of all things difficult emotions. It's where our traumas are categorized. It's for things that, like PTSD from even just getting a diagnosis like that. There's a lot of really difficult emotions. So that falls into the category where the Radical Remission survivors would release their suppressed emotions. And they would do that so that it would not be an energy blockage in their body. And there's a lot of beliefs that energy blockages can be what kind of plants this seed or this space for a tumor to start to grow. So making sure that, and I don't know if people can relate to, like, oh, I always hold my tension in my shoulders. Like that, what is that tension? That tension is not just, from lifting weights. The tension is from stress. So not that people get tumors in their shoulders typically, but that's it's a tangible way to relate to how we can hold stress in our bodies. And we want to do everything that we can to release that. This is where we will refer people to going to therapy if they have a really kind of trauma from their childhood that they need to work through. It could be things where sometimes people find that their marriage isn't really the right fit anymore and they need to leave the marriage to be able to get out of that stress state. And then the surprising one that came from the research was, and this is why we don't call it releasing negative emotions, it's suppressed emotions. And nostalgia came up in the interviews. And if you think about someone who's living in the past, I know, like I remember when my kids were really little, I love that time, and they wish that they could have another baby, or they're maybe thinking back to high school when they were the captain of their sports team or something, and really fondly remembering and almost like wishing they were still there. That nostalgia can also be an energy blockage because they're not able to be present in their today. So trying to use that as a beautiful memory and having gratitude that it brought you to be who you are today, but not wishing that you were there still. And that is also a suppressed emotion that needs to be released. So there's a lot of mindset work that can be done in this healing factor for sure.
I love that. I think that's really wise to just say emotions in general and let people feel what they need to feel.
Yeah. They come up in so many ways, just like, as many diet options as there are that many
true
healing modalities for releasing those emotions.
Yeah. Some people have probably seen the emotion wheels, right? That picture just came up in my mind when you're thinking about the huge array of emotions that we can feel. I had one of those for my kids at one point, where we had this little colorful emotion wheel where they got to go and like point to the emotion that they didn't have the words for,
Yes.
But yeah, just thinking about that, there is a wide variety of emotions. And I think that even if you may have like that person that wanted to heal through comedy, right? Or felt that they needed to heal through comedy. Maybe there are people that didn't really get to even express joy as a child. Maybe there was a really serious home, where they didn't get to celebrate things very often and whatnot. So just having that opportunity to express joy would be amazing.
Yeah, and that's something that I think it's a great idea. I never really thought about. The emotion wheel, the way it's been modernized is really through emojis, right? So
Yeah, that's true.
if you can identify a feeling that you're having, maybe look at that like little menu of emojis and be like, oh, that's the one. I feel like or I feel like that.
Right.
Right. So, sorry for those of you who are just listening.
Just hearing motion sounds.
Yeah, so different emojis can maybe help you if you can't figure out that feeling, like identifying just visually what it looks like, might help you access it. And what I will say that is probably one of the most important ways for people to connect with this and observe. So I believe in looking at things in this category from the space of curiosity. So really just, I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to feel a certain way about the way I'm feeling right now. I'm going to look at it curiously. So why am I feeling this way? What were the circumstances that led up to it? And then how did the circumstances lead to this feeling? And that can only be done in silence, whether it's through meditation or whether it's just sitting in silence every single day, allowing your brain and your subconscious to communicate and kind of talk about what happened that day.
Yeah.
So that you are giving space for your body to catch up, because we live in such a fast-paced world, right? So so many hits every minute with phones and emails and texts and verbally communicating with people, and just such a fast-paced environment that we do need to slow down and give ourselves, if you can have 5 minutes a day, great. 20's better. Certainly adding in a meditation practice that will really help kind of calm the area of the brain that needs to get back into that rest and restore state.
I think that's really wise. I think the word curiosity is one of my absolute favorite words to use, especially when it relates to health. And so just to be curious, of yourself, of your own emotions, and not to be judgmental of them. Because as I'm thinking, it's like, ooh, I often do that. I think I tell myself, oh, I shouldn't feel that way, or, I should feel this way, or.
Right. Yeah. And, I could catch myself if I were feeling very emotional. I would just like, oh, I can't cry right now. And a room full of people. Well, you know what? You can. Maybe you excuse yourself if you feel like you need to.
Yeah.
But it's important to try to address those feelings. And if you can't do it in the moment, to go back and make time later to go back and address it.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So the next ones we have, I like this one because the research shows it is by far the most powerful. And this one is having, increasing your social support. So making sure that you have a really, really strong social support system. It does not mean that you have to have like 12 best friends. It just means that you have to have one or two really strong people that understand you the way that you need to be understood. And again, very different for everyone. Some people don't even have that, and they really feel connected to their pets or their animals. Fur babies are real for a lot of people, and having that unconditional love can be everything. Social support has been shown in the research to be more powerful than, not drinking, having an unhealthy diet, or having a healthy diet, not smoking, all combined. So if you think about all of those elements, like you stop drinking, stop smoking, you stop eating a healthy, eat a healthy diet, and adopt an exercise practice, the value of all of those is surpassed by just having a strong support system in your body.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I think that needs to be talked about more.
Yeah,
because we talk about all those other things,
right?
The health, and not so much the social support.
Yeah, and I think it's just that's endlessly valuable in so many ways. In this factor, when we work with clients, we try to work with them on receiving, because it's easy to give out, help and care and support, but sometimes it's hard to ask for, or even if it's offered, it's hard to say yes to. So that's where this factor can really get some love, is by allowing people to come in, let them in, and be part of your healing.
Yeah, I think as a woman, I can't speak for men, I guess, but as a woman, I felt that pressure that I need to be able to handle all my things myself.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Especially someone who is used to being a parent and having that role of caretaker, or someone that might be caring for a parent themselves. And that caretaker role, often, whoever you are, female or male, that comes with so much responsibility that you get stuck in this mode of caring outwardly, and even self-compassion and self-care. Those are really, really key to adding into your everyday so that you can be strong for the people that you're supporting.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. So moving on to empowerment. So this is, I would say, probably a mental factor. Empowerment from the realm of radical remission, because it means a lot of different things. But in the spirit of radical remission research, what we find is empowerment, which was actually in the first book in Radical Remission, it was called Taking Control of Your Health. And after the book came out, the feedback was, people were feeling that if their diagnosis was their fault because they didn't have control. So, and that was not the purpose of the factor in the research. So then you renamed it empowerment in the next book. And what that means is making sure that you feel really comfortable with advocating for yourself with your medical team and your medical needs, making sure that you have all the practitioners that you need. We like to give the visual of you are the CEO of your health and you are at the front and the head of the boardroom table, and all of the people at the table have an equal space, whether it's your therapist and your oncologist, maybe it's your yoga teacher and your radiologist. Everybody has a space at the table, and they're all important. And you get to decide, who has the decision-making in which area of your life.
Right.
So we do a lot of work on helping people find their voice because, a lot of people will say, oh, I don't want to hurt my doctor's feelings. I don't want to get a second opinion and discredit our relationship. And, that is not a good answer.
Right.
When it comes to your health, you need to feel really that you are heard, you are seen, you are cared for, you are a human being to this practitioner, and that they know your name.
Yeah.
Remember your diagnosis when you come in.
Yeah.
And not just a number. So you feel really connected.
Yeah. I don't know what your thoughts on this are, but I've often thought about this as, some people will hear as they receive a diagnosis that, it's not, you didn't do anything wrong. There's nothing, it's not your fault. It just happened, and I almost think that that's disempowering, because if there's, nothing I did that caused this, then there's kind of nothing I can do to help it,
Yeah. And that's a great point, because just last week, 2 different people said this and it hit home. And I haven't really thought about it, but 2 people shared with me in different scenarios that they felt when they got the diagnosis that their body had failed them. And to your point, if you didn't do anything wrong, then how can you do anything right to help fix it? And again, through the lens of curiosity, not blaming anyone for their diagnosis. You do not have to take ownership that you caused yourself to get ill, because you could do the exact same thing as the person next to you and 2 different results occur. So it's nobody's fault. But we like to call them contributing factors. There are different things that contribute: environment, stress, diet. I mean, all of these things, right? So different things contribute to each individual's experience. And that is why these factors do work. And they do improve people's quality of life. They improve their longevity. They improve the efficacy of the drugs that they may choose to use. There are so many beautiful things that come out of these changes that really validate why they need to be adopted.
Yes, I really like that. I think that is empowering. For somebody to say, okay, I'm going to, what's the word that they used? Take control. What's in the
taking control of your health. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I want to make sure I get the wording right. So for somebody to say, I am going to take control of my health, I think that is a place that you can step into and then feel okay, I can actually take action steps forward and not just continue to be a victim to where I am right now.
Yeah. And empowerment plays into your ability to adopt these changes, right? If you feel like it's helpless and there's nothing I can do, then, and, to be fair, there's a lot of conventional medical practitioners out there that will say, oh, you don't have to change your diet. Just eat what you want. Do what makes you feel happy. They are well-intended. They are not educated in these forms of, healing tools.
Right.
Because they're trained in pharmaceutical help, and that's a fabulous intervention in a lot of ways. But there are other psychosocial ways and approaches that can be really helpful. And that's, the power of these healing factors is there. So there is one more left to share, and that is having strong reasons for living. And what came up in the research was purpose, purpose, purpose. Everybody needs to have a reason to want to get up that day, whether it's something small like I really want to finish this book, or reading this book or writing this book. It could be just simply, I have to get out of bed to feed my dog. It's going to get you out of bed. Some people have bigger things like, I have these little humans that I'm raising and I need to take care of them. And so I'm going to keep pushing through. And that is what gets people out of kind of a depressed state if they can focus on that positive purpose. And we'll do a lot of work with people on how to identify what that purpose is for them. Because a lot of times people will lose their sense of purpose, especially if they have a fear that they're not going to be here. And we say, absolutely, just assume you're going to be here. Because, a famous quote, I think it was a Deepak Chopra quote that we use all the time is, believe the diagnosis, but not the prognosis. So the diagnosis is true. It's science. You can see it on a scan. You can see it in the blood work, whatever. But no one can tell you that you have 2 months to live or a year to live or 5 years, or our goal is to get you to 5 years. None of that. I mean, I have seen it. I have seen the work. I've seen the miracles. I've talked to so many people besides those in the book. The Radical Remission Project has a podcast where we interview people who have healed against the odds. So I love hearing those stories every single day and being able to confirmly share those with clients and other people in my life that just need the hope. It's really important.
Yeah, that's why we call it radical remission, right? Because radical things can happen.
Yes, and radical hope, right? Having, trusting and believing. It takes some courage to believe.
True.
And to have that hope. And some people just don't even want to, I don't even want to hope that.
It's vulnerable.
Yes.
It's a very vulnerable thing.
Yes. Yeah. So having purpose, having strong reasons for living, that is our final 10th factor for on the list for today. So hopefully that gives everyone a little bit more information about these factors. And I have to say, they're for everyone.
Right.
Cancer patients, we use them from the realm of how they heal people from cancer. But Radical Hope, the second book, has lots of non-cancer healing stories. People who have healed from MS, people who have healed from ALS, from Alzheimer's, like really, really big diseases that we know, conventionally are not something that people typically heal from.
Right.
So this book, Radical Hope, has a lot of great stories to add.
Yeah. And one thing I want people to hear as well, and what I really took from the book in my season of life is this is not just for people who have a current diagnosis of some kind, but it's also for preventing the diagnosis. Like if it works to heal, it also works to prevent. And so these are things that we can do in our lives right now.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that. So I came to this work because my sister passed from cancer 10 years ago, but my cousin has breast cancer for my sister, cousin has breast cancer, aunt has breast cancer, grandmother has breast cancer. So I'm surrounded by this.
Wow.
And so I choose to utilize these. I'm considered what's called a previvor. And I choose to use these healing factors to have a different outcome. And so far, so good.
Right. Yeah.
And we'll see, I feel like these things are great for prevention, but they're great for health seekers.
Right.
And what I found when I learned about Radical Remission was after my sister had passed, was that these were the things that I did to heal from my grief after my loss. And every single one was what played into my healing, of a few years after that happened. And so if you are listening and you're struggling with, deep emotions, please know that these factors are also for you, because they can help you kind of aid your physical healing and your emotional healing.
So with all the clients that you have seen, all the stories that you've read, what are a couple of your favorite survivor stories?
Well, there's so many. I think that one story that I like to share because, this is a friend of mine who, she's a radical remission coach also, but she had a breast cancer diagnosis right around her 40th birthday. And for 10 years, she moved from her home. She moved to a place that had sun and sea because she really believed in the healing power of light. And she lives in the most beautiful place. And she has adopted so many cool lifestyle changes and has just had such a beautiful 10 years of that healing since that diagnosis. So I do love to share, there are things that are very alternative sounding in the things that these people do. One of our other colleagues believes that cold water immersion is what healed his leukemia. And he also had lymphoma, and he went to, he lives out on the Pacific Northwest, and he was doing some research on forest bathing and found that the trees out there had a 2-week immune boosting support. So he was like, well, if I go out there every week, maybe it'll boost my immune system even more. So he would hammock and sleep every week, one night a week, to get that exposure to the immune boosting powers of these trees, and didn't change anything else. And within 6 months, he was finding that he was healing his lymphoma. And to this day, he's never had treatment for his leukemia or his lymphoma. And he really, he's the cold bath immersion guy. I send everybody to him if they need to learn more about him. And just he has a book called The Wild Cure. His name is Dean Hall. So anybody wants to learn about his healing story, that is a really cool, unique story to share, and just shows the power of thinking outside the box.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, before we wrap up, could you kind of tell us what you do for the Radical Remission Project? And I think that would be a good way to get people in action step.
Absolutely. So the Radical Remission Project trains coaches. I am one of them. My private practice is called the Health Navigators. So our website is healthnavs.com. And you can follow us on social media at Health Navigators, on Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube, we're the Health Navigators official. But Radical Remission Project, while we do the trainings for coaches, all the coaches work out in the world, all over the world, sharing these healing factors and helping people implement them into their lives. We also are trained to teach Dr. Turner's Radical Remission Workshop. Mm-hmm. And if you go to radicalremission.com, there is a what we do kind of part of the website. You can find workshops all over the world, virtual, in person. We have some in-person ones coming this summer, which will be really fun. I always love doing stuff in person, though most of the work we do is virtual.
Yeah.
And so you can find a coach there. You can find a workshop there. If you're a practitioner and this interested you, you can find the teacher training there or the coach training. And then following all of the Radical Remission social media on Facebook and Instagram at Radical Remission, always putting out little new nuggets of research or healing stories or ways to connect. So the really, and of course, how could I forget to share the Radical Remission Stories That Heal podcast?
Yes, I love it.
that I am one of the 2 hosts of, and we share stories of people who have overcome the odds of their diagnosis and people who have been healers of those who have seen radical remission.
Yeah, it's a great way to nerd out on health. I love the podcast.
Yes.
You're doing a good job.
Oh, thanks.
So, before we kind of wrap up, is there anything else on your heart that we haven't covered just before we could kind of go into some fun questions? I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything.
I think we covered it. I really like to make sure people know that these factors are for emotional support and for health seekers too, because they're just so powerful and so accessible.
Yeah. So does anyone have to have a certain diagnosis or anything like that to benefit from the services that you guys offer?
Great question. And the answer is no. All are welcome. In our practice, if anybody does a Radical Remission workshop, we encourage them to bring their caregiver for free so that they can learn more about what they're doing. Sometimes we have the caregiver come to the workshop or do the coaching. I would say the coaching is really for anyone, but it is most impactful if it's directly to the patient. Sometimes it's hard for the caregiver to get the patient on board.
Right.
Certainly they can infuse all this knowledge into the situation if they're really closely linked to the patient. But absolutely, this is for everyone.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for clarifying. 3 fun questions. One is, what's your favorite way to de-stress?
I am someone who goes to the gym every day and does a boot camp workout. And that to me just sets the tone for my day. I need to get like tons of sweat, feel like I want to die.
Yeah, I love it.
And then leave feeling like I forgot I was even there. And just having a fantastic feeling the results of that throughout the day really helpful.
Yeah, it's a great way to set your day up for success.
Yeah.
What's your favorite go-to morning drink?
I come back from my gym and I do make a green smoothie. My dog is obsessed with kale. And so he knows the minute I get back from the gym, he's running circles, or he's like a little circus dog. He like does tricks and stuff. So he will do tricks for kale, less more than dog food or any other dog food I could offer him. So, green smoothie with, berries, with protein, with kale and all the good things. But I do have that every day.
Yes, I love that too. That sounds great. We actually had smoothie bowls for breakfast this morning.
Nice. I love that.
And who would you love to see as a guest on the Daily Wellness Podcast?
Oh, one of the people that I hope to get on my podcast as well. I'll put it out for both of us. Andrew Weil is one of my favorite practitioners. He's the founder of integrative medicine, or the father of integrative medicine. He's one of the teachers in my health coaching program, and such a cool, he looks like Santa Claus, and he is such a jovial, warm person, but has so many wonderful stories and information on healing. I think his book was actually spontaneous. One of his books, Spontaneous Healing, was what Kelly Turner read and made her realize that spontaneous remission was a thing. And that's where that started her journey, was with that book. So let's bring Andrew Weil to some.
Yeah. Inspiring.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for not only just being on this podcast, but thank you for doing what you're doing. I'm sure it's not always easy to walk this journey with so many people. And I just want to thank you for what you're doing, for the impact that you're having, and just encourage you to keep going.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I love it. It's definitely my strong reason for living. And I enjoy it. And I'm grateful to have these opportunities. So thanks for having me to share.
My pleasure. Thanks for listening to today's episode on the Daily Wellness Podcast. We hope that you found it helpful for your own wellness journey. And if so, we'd love for you to leave a review. Then come back and listen for review shoutouts on upcoming episodes. For more information, check out the show notes and connect with us on our website, dailywellnesscommunity.com.